Welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm, having a successful accounting, bookkeeping, and tax business. I'm Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and I'm going to be your host today. For the last 20 plus years, I've been working with accounting professionals to help you actually start and build your own successful accounting and bookkeeping and tax business. I've had the pleasure of working with thousands of accounting professionals, helping them get paid what they're worth, offering quality accounting services. Universal Accounting Center is an accounting school, post-secondary education for accounting professionals, for CPAs, accountants, degreed accountants, helping them actually specialize in small business accounting needs, and most importantly, get the marketing, training, and production support that they're needing to go out and start their business, allowing them to be in business for themselves, but not by themselves. Now, today we actually have a special guest. It is Seth David. Seth happens to be the founder and owner of Nerd Enterprises. He's someone I've known for years. I've had the fortune of running into him at numerous conferences, so it's always a pleasure to find Seth and to speak to him. He has a very strong presence online, and he's a very personable individual that you're going to soon hear. So what I want you to do is just basically sit back and enjoy and subscribe to this podcast. Make a point of putting this as something that you listen to regularly, and join us with our other episodes so that you can actually find out what more you can be doing to work on your business. So Seth, as we get started, I just want to actually point out that I know a little bit of your history, but I want to kind of go back further than you may be prepared to do, which is in your bio description. I know that you started and were trained as an accounting professional before moving to California. So I just wanted to start by asking, what drew you to the accounting profession to begin with? Why accounting?
It was my father's fault, actually. Joking aside, it actually kind of was, because I had, when I was 20, 21, let me back up a little further. When I was a young whippersnapper and I was getting out of high school, I went to college. I wanted to go for a computer science degree, but they actually made me start off with liberal arts because I was like a classic underachiever in high school. Like, I was always told from day one, you should be able to get straight A's. You're just not applying yourself. And I knew it. And I just had no interest in academics. In high school. Uh-huh. So when I went to college, they said, you don't have the grades to major in computer science. You need to do liberal arts, do well enough for a semester in liberal arts. We'll let you transfer to computer science. And I did. I did well enough, got into computer science. And, but still the same kind of theme continued. I just wasn't really that interested in academics. I didn't want to study. And I've told this story. It's been a while since I remember telling it, but it's an interesting story, I think. And, and probably not a lot of people, at least of recent, have heard this. But I remember one day, going into class, it was like an assembler language class. We were learning how to write code, but this is like code that doesn't even exist anymore in our world. And I'm sitting in there, and I had just I bumped into a guy who was in my class when I was out partying at the bars on Bayshore, Long Island, over that weekend. And he and I were chatting about some of the interesting experiences we had there. But while we were talking, I kind of overheard how the guy sitting behind me was talking to the person next to him about how he had spent the weekend essentially developing word processing software. And I remember the thought occurring to me, like, there's just no way I can compete with that, So anyway.
So the eavesdropping got the better of you.
What's that?
I said the eavesdropping got the better of you.
It did, because I was like, I'm not going to spend my weekends holed up in a cave somewhere doing, doing coding. I just couldn't see myself living that kind of a life, at least not then. Today, I actually probably could, but that's another story. So yeah. It was kind of, I think that was like the when the seed was sort of planted, like, this isn't going to work for me long term. And not long after that, my grades were slipping. I was having less and less interest in the academics. And so I went out and I left school. I hadn't gotten my degree yet. And I had at that time wanted to come to California to work as an actor. I was actually doing some acting then. And the guy who was producing the shows that I was acting in at the time had gone to the American Academy of Theater Arts. There were two schools at the time, one in New York, which was really geared towards getting people onto Broadway. And the one in California, as you might expect, was geared towards getting people onto the silver screen, right? So I don't even know if they call it a silver screen anymore, do they? I'm sure the technology's changed.
You're dating both of us is what you're doing.
So anyway, this guy wanted to write me a letter of recommendation to go to the one in California.
Hey, by the way, just to jump in, at least you didn't refer to them as talkies.
Yes, definitely. And at least they were in black and white still.
There you go. All right.
So, or silent.
Now that we've dated ourselves.
Silent films, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so he wanted to write me a letter of recommendation to go there, and my father kind of stepped in and he says, "Yeah, that's great, but I'm not going to support a starving artist. So if this is something you want to do, you're on your own." So I thought, okay, how can I kind of do this on my own? And I started hitting the classified ads in the newspaper, thinking, what kind of job can I get? I had this dream. This romantic dream that I was going to save up money, I was going to buy a Jeep, and well, you said we can speak very casually and freely here, right? Okay.
Oh yes,
So my
please.
master plan, this was about the ripe young age of around 19, was
Is this with your pinky to your mouth, your
yeah,
master plan?
exactly.
Your conniving.
Long before he even existed. Um, my master plan was I was going to save up money to buy a Jeep. I was going to buy maybe like a pound of weed, and I was going to just smoke my way from New York to California driving in my Jeep, very romantically, hair fluttering in the wind, with the top off. That was the plan. That was the dream. And Martin Luther King had his dream. I had mine. That was that.
You had
So
yours.
that didn't quite work out. What I did do,
Did you even get in the Jeep?
none of it worked out. I never had. To this day,
All right, there you go. Not even the Jeep
I've
part.
never owned a Jeep. Um, but
Okay.
where it gets kind of interesting, I think, is that while I was looking at classified ads and I was looking for a quick way to make the kind of money that I wanted to make, like 10 grand very quickly, and I saw this ad that said stockbroker trainee earn $10,000 a month, and I said done. Right. Next thing I know, I'm studying for the Series 7 and learning to become a stockbroker.
Okay.
And I did that. So by the time I was 21, I was actually working for Prudential Securities right on Water Street, right off of Wall Street, like in the hub of it.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, the
And it was
heart of it
pretty
all.
exciting stuff. And then I went back to get my accounting degree. And this is where my father kind of stepped in again. And because I didn't know, I knew I needed to go back to school. A lot of people, I was starting to do very well, actually, especially for a 21-year-old. I was making very good money. Turns out I was a pretty decent salesperson. And they train you, they teach you how to do kind of hard sales. And I was good at it. So it was not hard to convince me at that point, because I was a smart enough guy, that, hey, you know what, the stock market will always be there, but if you don't go back to school and get a degree of some kind, what happens if this doesn't work out? You really don't have much to fall back on. And so that was the decision. Well, what do I go back to school for? Should I study finance? That's normally what you do when you think of Wall Street and that kind of thing. But my dad kind of stepped in and said, finance is great, but to do anything significant with finance, you'll need an MBA. But if you get an accounting degree, you'll always be able to find work. That was, of course, it was a longer conversation than that, but that was the essence of it. And I said, you know what, makes sense. Maybe for the first time in my life, I'm going to actually listen to my father. And I did. And I went to Pace University in New York and got my accounting degree. But those other habits that kind of are tangent to the part of the dream I had about buying all that weed and taking it in the Jeep with me, well, those things I kind of was continuing to run away with. So, as many people know, it's a pretty well told story by now. As things progressed and I got my accounting degree and I started working as an auditor, I was also escalating in my extracurricular activities. So by the time I did get out to California, it was not to pursue an acting career. It was to attend my third rehab. And then I started life over. By then I was actually about 28. Yeah, 28. It's been almost 21 years since I got clean and sober.
Well, first of all, congratulations on that. That is a huge accomplishment. And knowing some individuals that struggle with a variety of things, I can definitely say it's a daily thing. So congratulations on the sobriety. Here's my question, though. And this is a personal thing. Obviously, you came to a point where through either intervention or personal realization, you realized something had to change. I'm just kind of curious, what was that thing that caused you to realize the path you were on wasn't sustainable and you had to change your trajectory? You had to do the rehab.
So it's a great question. And it was really, I think, a combination of things that culminated, all at once. The first part, and what I really had to come to the realization of initially, even to be able to make that sort of, to cross that line, so to speak, was the realization that at the rate I was going, I was going to die. Like it just, for a long time I was in denial about that. And I thought, oh no, I'll be able to stop when I really want to, when I really need to. And I remember even telling a fraternity brother of mine when I was still back in school getting that accounting degree, while I was getting loaded one night. And he's like, aren't you afraid you're going to get addicted? And I said, no, only an idiot would get addicted. I'll know when to stop. Because I thought I was a pretty smart guy. And I thought that's all it was going to take. Little did I know It had nothing to do with how smart you are, and a lot to do with a lot of other things. So I think first, yes, it is.
That's very humbling.
Especially knowing that by my own standards, it turns out I was an idiot, apparently, because I couldn't stop when I wanted to. And that was, one of the core problems. So I said, well, I guess I'm an idiot because that's what I said. So I looked at the fact that at the rate I was going, it was becoming too apparent. I could really no longer be in denial about it, that at the rate I was going, it was just a matter of time. I was going to die. Right? I was going to overdose or something. I'd already been through some experiences that seemed pretty nearly that. I'll never forget. There was one time, it was like wee hours of the morning. My heart started palpitating so hard. I actually thought, this is it. I've gone overboard. I'm going to die right here, right now. And, I started slowing my breathing, trying to calm my heart rate down, and eventually did. And what do you think I did as soon as my heart rate calmed down and I felt better? I took another hit. Of course.
You took it again. Yep, that's
even
right.
Facing death, like very near, I'm sure, actual death, it still wasn't enough to get me to stop yet. But then that coupled with the fact that my father stepped in again, because by this time he knew what was going on. I'd already been to a couple of rehabs, and he had made me sign something. We literally put it in writing that if I relapsed again, I had to go away. And so that day came. And we had the discussion. He reminded me of what I had signed, and I said, "No, sorry, I signed that agreement under duress. I'm not going anywhere."
Under duress,
right? I had a good word there, duress, right?
Duress, yes.
So my dad said to me, he says, you know what? Fine. My dad was getting some help of his own. He was going to what's called Al-Anon, which is a support group for family members of alcoholics who, and so they teach them how to deal with people like me.
Yeah.
Because it's otherwise you get into what they call classic enabling.
Yes.
Where my parents are so afraid that I'm going to die that they feel like they need to just help me and give me money or whatever I need to get me through. So at this time he had learned better. And he said to me, he says, well, I can't, even though we signed it, I can't make you go. He said, but we're going to have a serious talk about your finances. Because up till then, he was providing me with a lot of support. All my money was going, up my nose or wherever. And so I didn't have money. So when I needed a car repair, guess who came in and saved the day? Or when I couldn't pay my rent, guess who came in and saved the day? So that was going to stop.
Yeah.
And it was the combined two realizations, mainly one that I was going to die, and the other one that I was getting cut off, which means I'm probably going to die a lot sooner. That made me say, and I remember I hung up the phone with him, angry, of course. And then a few minutes later, I called him back and I said, you know what? It was almost like what I'd been learning at the meetings that I'd started going to kind of flashed in front of me. I sort of started to see my future. I started to see myself homeless, literally, and because I was already behind on my rent.
Yeah.
And so it was like like they say in the program, they say you play the tape through, and I was playing the tape through, and I was very scared. And so I called my father back, and I said, you know what? You're right. I need to do this. I need to go away as much as I don't want to. So let's do this, but let's make this happen quickly before I lose my nerve. Because we had already discussed that he had found this place in California that he wanted to send me to. I think part of it was to get me out of my element.
Yes.
Although, people who've been around the program like I have for a long time know you can't just do a geographical because you still take you with you, right?
Yes. Yes.
But it certainly can help if you're doing the other things properly. So he wanted to get me out of my element, and he found out about this place in California that had a really good reputation. And so there it was. So next thing I know, I'm driving home to start packing my things. I call a friend of mine who had gotten me into meetings at the time, this guy, Evan, and I told him what was going on. And I don't know, for those who don't know the New York geography, at the time I was living up north in Westchester County, almost on the border before the next county.
Okay.
And this friend, Evan of mine, was on the other side of the Hudson in Nyack, right? So not exactly around the corner, but he was the guy who got me into the meetings. He at that time had been clean for like over 10 years. And he knew what I was looking at, very likely, in terms of whether or not I was actually going to successfully make it from my apartment in Cortlandt Manor, New York, out to Long Island where my parents lived without making a stop off in the city somewhere,
Yeah.
He just knew better. So he said, Seth, hang tight. He says, I'm coming to get you.
Wow.
and I was kind of blown away, but I got it. I understood that he was going to make sure I got there without incident.
Yeah.
And he did. And in exchange, I was supposed to be helping him with his taxes. I had gotten out of school. I had my accounting degree, and but obviously I was not really in a good mental frame of mind to be doing somebody's taxes. But luckily, my dad had an accounting degree also, and so he, not that he did taxes for a living, but he knew enough to do a simple individual return like that. So in exchange for Evan's generosity with his time, driving from Nyack to Westchester and then all the way out to Long Island.
Long Island, yes.
So my father sat down with him. I told him, bring your tax stuff. And my dad, as a way of saying thank you, sat down with him for an hour or so and helped him, prepare his taxes for that year. And
Wow.
and I got home safely. And then I sort of detoxed in my parents' house for about a week before they were able to clear up a bed at this place here in California where I went.
So just to jump in, thank you for sharing that. But more importantly, I really do believe that there's individuals that are listening in that can relate to this either personally, having gone through something similar, or maybe experiencing some very simple things like that today themselves. But I think also so many of us have perhaps children or friends that are going through what you're describing, and hearing your success and sobriety so far, I think can give hope. It gives a good sense of realism to the fact that even through these struggles and trials, there is that hope. And the other thing I would also just want to chime in is the fact that we're all creatures of habit. Just being humans, addiction is a very common thing. And although there's lesser addictions in the sense that they may not be life threatening, I think we all have addictions, preferences, things that we tend to do that we maybe need to reflect on and really consider, are they healthy? And I applaud you for not only doing it yourself, but also getting the support that you received and accepting that support that you did, because I think that's one of the hard things is, one, first acknowledging the problem, but two, accepting the support and help that's around us. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's well, look, it's so two things I want to say on that. Number one, yes, I think there's no question anybody listening has probably been touched in some way, shape, or form by
Yes.
addiction. If not themselves, a family member, a friend, probably multiple people, right? I think we all
Yes.
probably know somebody somewhere
Yes.
who's gone through this, especially nowadays, and
Yes.
it's so different. I'm so fortunate to have sort of gotten sober when I did, because now it's much more widely accepted. It used to be the stigma around it. It was like you were ashamed and didn't want anybody to know. But now most people have the reaction, Roger, that you just expressed, which is, that they're very proud and very glad. When the time came for me to start making amends to the people I had harmed, I was blown away by the reception. There was one person, it happened to be the first person, who essentially told me to go F myself, which I was shocked and disappointed about, because it was somebody who I had regarded as a good friend. And I felt like it was really just a misunderstanding that we had. And I felt like I could reason with her. But in the end, she wanted nothing to do with me. And that was the first amends I went to make. And it wasn't very encouraging. But I called my sponsor, and he kind of talked me off the ledge, and he reminded me, you're not doing this for them, you're doing it for you. You're
Yeah.
doing it to clean up your side of the street, so to speak.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's really, I think, worth noting here, and bringing it full circle back to, what eventually evolved in my career and where I started going, as you mentioned in the nice introduction you gave, that we bumped into each other at conferences. In my first Sleater conference, which was the first conference I went to in the accounting industry, I remember speaking in one of the events and making reference to the fact that I was in recovery. And people coming over to me quietly afterwards, thanking me for being so open about that and expressing that they were either struggling or had a similar struggle, or something along those lines. And then going forward from there a few years, one of the years that I spoke at QuickBooks Connect, one of the most successful sessions I've given to date ever at a conference was at QuickBooks Connect, and it was called Planning and Focus: The Real Keys to Success. And I just illustrated my process for how I model my revenue streams and turn that into like a goal, and how I track it and everything. But I realized, because of what happened after I gave that session, I don't think about it that consciously, but how much of the language
Mm-hmm.
of AA
Oh,
has
yeah.
gotten into me,
Yes.
because it's just a natural part of how I talk. Because I've been at this for almost 21 years now in recovery, that somebody came over to me, and it was like in the line of people that came to thank me, and this young lady comes up to me and says, "By the way, are you a friend of Bill's?" And that's, for anyone who doesn't know, that's code for a U in AA, because AA
Yeah.
was started by Bill Wilson. So that's the kind of code. And I said, yes. I said, how did you know? And she started reciting phrases that she heard in my presentation
Yeah.
that she recognized as being essentially ripped right out of AA. There were things like I was talking about it in the presentation in the context of like customer service, where I describe, taking the cotton out of my ears and putting it in my mouth so I can actually listen to what the customer prospect has to say.
Mm-hmm.
But that phrase comes from AA. That was one of the things she pointed out that she recognized. And there
Yeah.
were a few other clues that she picked up on. And clearly this means she was. And in that same day, an employee of Intuit actually approached me and said that she really appreciated because I have been very open about it, and she's read a lot of my blog posts and things that have touched on this part of my life. And she came over and just wanted to thank me because apparently she had been having her own struggles, and she found what I was putting out there along those lines very inspiring and helpful, which of course is why I do it.
Well, what I think you're sharing there are the tells that these people can recognize, and then they kind of grow more akin to what it is you're sharing because they can identify. And the way I would add to this is I think there's a huge distinction between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy being that we're definitely genuinely interested in and caring of other individuals, but empathy, when you've gone through a true trial, a personal tribulation, and on the other side of it you come out, you've experienced something that is unique. And it's not that you can go to someone and necessarily say, I know what you're going through, but empathy is in fact that ability to say, I've been where you are at.
Exactly. Yep.
And a lot of people resonate with the fact that they're not alone. And sometimes these journeys that we're all on, you go to the conference, you put on your good face, you go out there and you play the part of the professional. But at the same time, at some of these conferences, you have an opportunity to meet with peers and really kind of take down that facade and be real, be genuine, and say, I'm struggling, I'm having this challenge, I'm having this difficulty. And sometimes it's not all professional. Sometimes it's personal, it's self-doubt, it's these different trials, and maybe it's the skeletons in our own closets that are coming back to haunt us. And I think what you're doing is you in a discreet way in your presentation were able to give some of the tells that allowed people to then connect with you and resonate and say, you know what, I can identify with Seth's story here. And that's where people, I think, are getting endeared to you and drawn to you. So I applaud you. This is wonderful that you're being transparent like this, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I don't, in full transparency, I think sometimes it's better not to have something sort of planned when we're doing things like recording a podcast, because it's just this way, like you said when we started, it's just a casual conversation. I think that's when we're nice and relaxed and at peace and more able to, to sort of, let the guard down and just, and I've always been like that. I've always been kind of an open book. At one time, I remember somebody that, more than one person at various times actually over the years had criticized me for being so open and public about my recovery. And one was a guy that I actually went to high school with who got sober many years after I did. And so he was at the time he was new himself. And so he was first hearing all the stuff about maintaining anonymity and this and that.
Uh-huh.
And so he came out to me, not so much criticizing me, although I suspect there was a little bit of a critical tone, but it was more, I think he was trying to learn for himself. He was like, aren't we supposed to be anonymous? And so I said to him, I said, let me explain something to you. I said, there's a couple of sort of angles on this. And really what it comes down to, and this is actually in our AA literature very explicitly, is you have to check your motives. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about this, Roger, and what I love about the way that I've been able to kind of bring this out in my career, throughout, is that I've taken everything I've learned in sobriety and I've infused it into my business, how I run my business, who I do business with. All of it has played a significant role, even down to when I started putting videos out on YouTube. It was like exactly modeled after the philosophy of AA, where it's you give it away to keep it, is the phrase that we use.
Yes.
But more in the context of like when people, the CPA who was doing my taxes that year, I remember saying, you're crazy. Why are you giving all this information away for free? And I just kind of said, trust me, I know what I'm doing, and I did, because by giving it away freely, it turned out to be what we refer to in AA as a program of attraction rather than promotion. right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it's done. In fact, in the business context, it has attracted lots of business for me. So it's paid off in spades. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that the well, so going back to my friend who was asking me about anonymity, I said, let me share a story with you, and I'll share it with everyone here, of course. When I was brand new, like first going to meetings before I went to California, but I had started going to meetings trying to clean up. And I had a sponsor. He was the first sponsor I ever had. The guy's name was Eddie. I still love him to this day. I'm still in touch with him. And I remember one day he picked me up for lunch, and I had my books from at the time I was going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings, and I had the books from NA right there in the passenger seat of my car in plain view. And he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What do you mean? What am I doing?" He says, "You've got your books wide open in plain view. What about your anonymity?" And I said, "What difference does it make if I want to, if isn't it up to me whether or not I have to be anonymous?" And he said, "Let me show you something." And he opened up to a part of the NA has a meditation book called Just for Today. And he opened it up. He knew where this was because obviously he had had a similar experience. And he read me this passage, which I'll paraphrase and say that in essence, one of the reasons anonymity is so important, particularly in the beginning, is that as addicts and alcoholics, and I think this goes beyond that, I think a lot of others will relate to this, we want validation, right? We want to be praised. And in this case, we want to be praised for doing what we already should be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We already should be not drinking and using drugs. So we want that praise. So a lot of times we want to, we disguise it as, oh, I'm an open book. But the reality is we're telling the whole world and letting the whole world see that we're in recovery because we want that praise from people. We want people to tell us how wonderful we are, right? So it goes back to checking your motives. When those are your motives behind doing it, then yes, you need to protect your anonymity because it really goes to ensuring that you learn humility, right?
Yes.
Because going out there and seeking praise is the opposite of humble. And humility is the core foundation principle of the whole 12-step process, right? So we have to learn humility. And what I explained to my friend was that at this point in time, many years later, I think it was probably 10 years ago, so I was already 10 years sober by then. I explained to him that I told him that story, and then I said, today, I'm very clear on my motives. I don't need the validation anymore. I've already had a lot of success in every single area of my life, especially in my relationships with my parents that I had, it took time, but I was able to repair those relationships to the point where my parents trusted me again, and other family members trusted me again. I said, so I don't need the validation today. The reason I do it today is actually based on our 12th step, which is all about passing the message along to others. And I pointed out to him, I said, the reason I do it now is to place myself in a position to be of service to others. Because by dropping those subtle cues when I'm giving a presentation, or by posting every year on my sobriety, some people call it anniversary, some call it a birthday, by posting about it and celebrating the fact, as I'll do this coming April, that I'm now going to be 21 years sober, clean. By celebrating that, what I'm also doing, first of all, I'm inspiring others who may be struggling to say, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. And also, I'm opening up a secret door for people, as many people have done, to reach out to me privately because they're afraid and they want somebody they can speak to and know that it's in confidence. And I get private messages from people frequently, especially after I make those kinds of posts public. And they say, hey, I think I'm having a problem. What do I do? Or they say, hey, I've got a family member who I think may be having a problem. What do I do? And so, again, it very directly puts me in a position to be of service. And it gives me the opportunity to do that, which, by the way, at the end of the day, is the ultimate way that I have of continuing to stay sober myself.
Oh, and I like that tie-in, yes. So, Seth, there's a few things that I'd like to just comment on. One is I do believe that this actually applies very much with the accounting services that many of us offer. One of the things that I have experienced is in our company, Universal Accounting Center, we have a division of our business that's called Universal Business Builders, where we do business consulting, business coaching with business owners. And it's diverse. It's beyond just owners of accounting firms and CPA firms, bookkeeping firms. What we do is we work with owners of other industries. And what I'm trying to get to here is in those sessions, there's oftentimes the safe environment that we're needing to create for our clients, where when I'm meeting one-on-one with a business owner and we're trying to identify what's going on with the business, it's sometimes not a business related item. Typically, it's sometimes a outside of the business, something personal that they're dealing with that is affecting the business. And as I've had opportunity to get to dive into what really is going on, that backstory tends to reveal things that are sometimes uncomfortable or even embarrassing. And to create for our clients a safe environment where, in order for us to help them build their business, we may need to become that safe confidant, that trusted advisor. And it's not that we're trying to become their therapist or their psychiatrist or psychologist, but we are trying to say that we are here to help you move towards building your business. And there are those peripheral edges where we get into these experiences like you're describing, and the techniques, the methodology that you're already able to adopt and implement apply in this world as well, is my point. So I think what you're describing is very much real to what many of us are experiencing as we get to work with our clients year upon year, year after year. We start to actually get to know the intricacies of not just the business, but the goings on around the business. And that oftentimes involves personal lives.
Right. Yeah. And I love how earlier you talked about, the empathy part, which comes from the
Hmm.
ability to identify because I've had a similar experience or what have you. And
Hmm.
one of the things I love that I learned during last year, actually, it was actually from a buddy of mine that I went to high school with, who's also become very successful in the business world that he's in. And I listened in on one of his webinars last year, and he said something that has really stuck with me to the point where I've repeated it myself over and over again, which is that he was talking about, just being a consultant in general, and where you're having that conversation with that prospective client, right? And the way he summed it up was perfect because it reminded me exactly of the way we approach going to somebody who's not quite sober yet and trying to learn how to get sober. And there's so many parallels to this, Roger, where,
Yeah.
you're looking at that prospect who, as an accountant, they're coming to you because it's very possible their business is getting wasted, if you know what I mean, right?
Yes.
And they desperately need help cleaning up the accounting of their business. And they need somebody who, here it is. This is what my friend said. He said, our job as the consultant talking to the client, their prospect, is to make them feel safe.
Hmm.
And
A safe environment. Yes.
yeah, I want to pause on that for a minute and let people unpack that for a minute. Your job when you're talking to a prospect is to make them feel safe. There's so much that's important about that, largely because you have a lot of marketers who will tell you the exact opposite. They'll tell you to make people feel uncomfortable. They'll tell you that causing somebody to feel discomfort is going to be more likely to motivate them to want to buy from you. And I'm sure there's truth to that. I'm sure there's a whole psychology around that for why that's effective. I would rather build my business more slowly on a foundation that has its basis in making people feel safe. Because when I get those customers, I'll have them for life,
Hmm.
not just for a minute. I will have them for life. So if I start approaching every relationship I have, I even posted on Facebook recently, I said, imagine if we went through our day approaching every single relationship based on one simple principle to make everyone I come into contact with feel safe. Imagine what kind of a world it would be if everybody did that today.
That'd be huge.
Right? And so I think about that now. And I think that's my job in sobriety when I'm talking to somebody who's struggling to get sober. And that's my job in the accounting world when I'm talking to somebody who's struggling to get their business affairs in order.
Well, when I'm working with our clients, one of the things that I experience is a pivotal moment. It's almost a palpable moment where the client all of a sudden does feel safe, and it's when they realize that they're in a non-judgmental environment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help and understand you. And as a true coach, I think it's through the proper questioning and the holding of accountability that they're able to then really become much more or better than they are already. So one of the things that I would just share is the fact that I have found that there are those instances where there's this moment of epiphany of, I am safe, this is okay, let me open up, let me be transparent. And they start to just really reveal a lot more of the underlines of what's going on. And that's where everything gets done. And so you're right, you create that safe environment, they're going to be more endeared to you, more committed to you. They're going to be more open with you. And I think that's where you're going to both thrive. And that's where I think from accounting, we recognize that we may know more about that business, especially financially, than spouses know, than the employees know, than maybe the investors know, because we're intimately involved with the numbers. And those numbers oftentimes lead to asking very poignant, direct questions. And sometimes those questions have bad decisions behind them. They may have history behind them. And all of a sudden, we just start to hear this story that maybe no one else is hearing, and we get to listen. And that's, I think, a critical component of accounting if and when we do it right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so many times, and so many people I've encountered who, and we all experience this, where, and many times I can admit that I've been guilty of it myself at times, where I'm talking to somebody, but I'm not really listening to them because I'm just thinking of the next thing I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost speaks to an attitude of, I know what you need better than you do. Right. And when I've learned to humble myself enough to be able to, as I said earlier, take the cotton out of my ears and stick it in my mouth. And, I have a lot of conversations with accountants and bookkeepers about, working on the prospects. And I think I can tie this in perfectly, Roger, to something you and I discussed a bit before today, which is about what you said you refer to as mapping, right? Which
Yeah.
is the marketing, the accounting services, and then the production. I think I have a way to tie this in perfectly to that. So bear with me
Please.
on this for a minute, because when I learned to humble myself enough, what I realized is we have a lot of this talk about what kind of checklist do you have to go through with the client when you're on the call with them. And I just tell them, please just do me a favor and take a match and light it and burn that checklist. It is the most ridiculous, impersonal thing you can do to a prospect, especially when your job is to make them feel safe. And if you go through some robotic checklist, it's like the worst thing you can do, in my opinion. Conversely, what I do is and this is what I tell others to do, is burn the checklist and get on the phone with the client or prospect and say, it's not even a question, it's more of a direction. And I just say, tell me what's going on with your business. And then I do, and then I shut up and I listen, and I have, Evernote or Dynalist or OneNote or something open, and I'm taking copious notes while they're talking, practically getting a transcript of everything they're saying. Because I never know which one thing they're going to say that's going to be my cue to sort of spit back to them at some point,
Mm-hmm.
as the core of what I want to do for them, and where I think I can best help them and how, right?
Yes.
So, we talk about making people feel safe, which is the M in MAP, right? For marketing and selling.
Yes.
That's the first job. Make them feel safe enough to want to put their confidence in you and give you their hard-earned money, because you can win their confidence. And the way you do that is by making them feel safe, by making them feel like, my money's in good hands. This person's going to take care of me. They're not going to just take my money and run away and ignore me, right? How many times have we signed up for something where we thought that we were signing up to get taken care of, and as soon as they got our money, it's like they're nowhere to be found, right?
Yep.
And there's too many people out there doing business this way. In a way, though, I look at that as an opportunity for people like me, where I know I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do it legitimately, right? So that's the M, right? Then we have the accounting services, right? So that's the services we start to provide after we've won their confidence and gotten past the marketing and selling phase. And again, our job is to make the client feel safe, to reinforce that they did make the right decision,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure we follow up with them and stick with them and say, here's the plan, and then follow up again and say, here's the plan, here's what we've done to execute that plan, and here are the measuring sticks that we're using, and here's how we're tracking our progress, and here's what we've been able to accomplish so far, right? And then we get to the P in MAP, which is the production part, which is working more efficiently, maybe onboarding new clients faster. That's a big part of the beginning phase, onboarding, that we often lose confidence right after we've just won it.
Mm-hmm.
From the clients, because we don't reinforce that confidence by letting them know that we actually have a clear process and that they understand what's happening next in every step of the way. And by the way I have solved for that, better than any app you can use, better than anything else you can do, in my opinion, is, well, there is one app that's tied into this, which is called Zoom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I do a video call with the client once a week in the beginning, just to make sure that I'm not forgetting something that they know they need help with. And so I give them the opportunity to tell me or remind me, hey, don't forget, I also need XYZ. Again, that's how I continue to make them feel safe and reinforce that feeling that they have, so that they continue to feel safe with me. The worst thing we can do is let somebody feel confused and be unclear. That's when they start not feeling safe, right?
And doubting. Yes.
So that's the key to all this. And that's how, from when I started first uploading videos to YouTube and offering valuable accounting information for free, which was, when the guy who suggested to me that I do that made that suggestion, it reminded me exactly of recovery, because he says what you're doing is you're giving it away freely. What has been given to you. Granted, I paid a lot of money for my education, or more accurately, my father paid a lot of money for my education. So, just being honest, but but the idea was to give it away. When you get sober and you go through all 12 steps of AA, the 12th step is all about giving it away, finding a newcomer and taking them through the process and teaching them how to stay sober. And in a sense, I just turned that into the accounting world and said, I'm going to create these videos. That's going to be a program of attraction. I'm going to teach people how to do the things that I'm doing frequently, how to do the things that I'm frequently being asked by my clients' bookkeepers. And I'm going to make videos, because the truth is I did it in part selfishly because I was tired of rewriting the same emails, answering the same questions. And I said, if I just do a video, which I now know how to do a video, I can just send the link to the video and it saves me a lot of time. And they get the visual, which is much more useful, I think, than a wall of text in an email, right?
Yes.
So everybody kind of wins there. But that was the first time I realized, wait, I can take what I'm learning in my recovery process and actually infuse that into my business and run my business this way. And if you really know the history of AA, Bill Wilson was a stockbroker and he was a very good salesman. And it's interesting, there's a lot of accounting language that you see when you read the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And then that was written in the 30s. But there's a lot of, he talks about our ability to continue as a going concern. He's referring to a person who's struggling with alcoholism, but that language is ripped right out of the accounting world, right? Where we talk about an entity's ability to continue as a going concern. That's key language in an audit opinion, right? So it's interesting. It's even now as I look back, I'm getting chills actually thinking about it, because my experience in recovery has had such a significant impact in how I started and built and developed and evolved my business today.
Well, first of all, amen. I am so humbled and pleased to hear what you've just said, because I think, obviously, MAP being what we profess, you've adapted it and spoken to it superbly. So that was wonderful. But secondly, I think it's true that from the heart, you can definitely see that what we're discussing here is it's more than just numbers. There's emotion, there's energy behind the accounting services that we're providing. What we're talking about here is life changing for the business owners that we service. And so as you're sharing all this, what I'm really getting, and it's like you with the chills, it's the realization that we're impacting, we're affecting lives. And so many of the clients that we work with will eventually get to see the relationship that they have with us professionally is truly more than just the numbers that we're doing. So I love what you've shared. Time has really gotten away from us. I was so excited to ask you about your starting in the accounting world in California and how it led you to the point of wanting to start your business. I know you've got, as part of your emphasis, I inspire and educate. I know that's the core. Why don't you just share something real quickly about that?
So that's actually something that I came up with recently. I've been studying a lot of the marketing side of things. I've been very closely following Jay Abraham, whom you may know.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm currently, and I always emphasize that I study books, I don't read them, because if I read them, I don't really retain much. But when I study them, I actually figure out how to take what I'm studying and learning how to apply it in my life. Very similar to what we do in AA, by the way. So I'm studying a book of his. It's called Getting Everything You Want with All You've Got, or something like that. It's kind of a long title, but I'm learning a lot. And the inspire and educate part it was inspired by what I'm learning from studying his book, because he talks about a lot of this kind of stuff. He talks about making clients feel safe and prospects feel safe and everyone else that you come in. And he also puts it in the context of, like, if you're an employee at a company, you're providing a service to that company. There's things you can do there to help get yourself up that ladder faster. If you think of your boss as your customer and that you're doing a service for them. But he goes on to describe, the lengths to which we should be taking it. A lot of us describe what we do for our clients, and we kind of put ourselves in the story as the hero. And he kind of talks about how you want to make the client the hero of the story that you're telling.
Yep.
And what that starts to look like when you really think it through is, And he uses a great example of how people want to come away from a car buying experience, being able to brag to their friends about what a great deal they got and what a great car they got.
Yes.
And the same could be said of how your clients talk about how smart they were for hiring you, who's providing them with their accounting services. You want them to be able to brag to their colleagues about this amazing accountant they've hired. They handle everything. I don't have to worry about a thing. I can get my questions answered. More important than anything else, I'm getting the advice that I have desperately wanted for a long time and never got. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the key that most clients complain about with respect to their accountants. What you ask them what they're not getting, they'll tell you, I'm not getting advice. I'm getting a set of books, maybe I'm getting a tax return filed, but I'm really not getting advice. They want advice more than anything. And they want advice delivered in a non-condescending form, right?
Uh-huh.
And they want advice delivered in simple terms that they can understand because they're not accountants. And let's face it, I'll be very frank here, a lot of accountants don't have the right level of patience to be able to do that effectively. But if they learn patience, which patience is something that can and should be learned, then they can change that. And now you can probably take on fewer clients and make a lot more money and work a lot less. That's the key. And that's what everybody wants to do, right? We want to make more money. We want to work fewer hours. And that's the way you do it, is by providing, we talk about it, we use different terms like strategic services, strategic guidance, advisory services, right? But the simple way to look at it is they want us to give them advice, which means we have to have bulletproof books, which is my buzzword. And then once the books are bulletproof, now we can actually use that data to provide them with the analysis and the advice that comes with that. I haven't answered your question yet, though. So I was starting to think about, what do I do? How do I succinctly describe what I do? Chris Brogan, another guy that I follow, who I think is a genius in just marketing and sales and that kind of thing. He says that he recently asked people on Twitter to describe what you do in like 6 words. And I because I had to conform to 6 words, I came up with, we clean up financial accounting messes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote back. He says, that's great. It was a great way to kind of describe what I do, although it's really just a small part of it. But then I thought, what do I do in the bigger picture for people, especially with all these training services that I do? Now more than ever, I do a lot more training. I do, I've got courses and I do a lot of one-on-one training. That's still where a lot of my revenues come in, is from the one-on-one, or what I call live support. It's not necessarily limited to just one-on-one. It could be 1 on 100, but live support, where I'm logging in remotely with people and they share their screens and I get them through whatever they may be stuck on. And so I thought to myself, what am I really doing for these people? And the thing I recently described to somebody that I really love about doing, especially that part, especially if I'm in a Zoom and I can see them, is, and I also described it, that I love teaching at Santa Monica College over here. I've been teaching Excel classes for their community ed program. And what I love about doing that is that I'm in the room with the people and I can see the light come on in their eyes. Right. And I love getting those oohs and ahs because I've just shown them something that they didn't know how to do before that's clearly going to change their lives. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true, because it's going to help them do something, as you point out in the production part of MAP, that they're going to be able to work more efficiently. Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be able to get something done that they either couldn't do before, or they're going to be able to get it done faster, more efficiently, most importantly, more effectively. So when I summed all that up, another thing you might have seen if you poked around my new website recently, besides the Inspire and Educate, is I have several references with the phrase, helping you to work more efficiently, more effectively, and with greater accuracy. Right? Because I think the concern some people have with greater efficiency is that we're working faster, so maybe we're getting sloppy. So I felt it was important to tie all 3 of those together. Right?
Very well said.
More
yes.
efficiently. Yep. More efficiently, more effectively, and with greater accuracy. But then I wanted to just kind of zoom a little bit further out on that and describe what I really do for people. And it came up as I was writing the About page on my new site. And I said, you know what? And I got this really from John Ferrara. I have to credit him with where the phrase was actually truly inspired, because John uses the phrase a lot. And that's when I came up with, in simple terms, in 2 words or 3, technically, what do? I inspire and educate people. Let's put it this way. That's what I hope to accomplish.
Yes.
Is that I hope to inspire and educate people. Get them excited about what they're doing or where they want to go, and educate, give them the knowledge that they need that's going to help them get to wherever it is that they're inspired to want to go.
So here's this is going to be a mouthful. One, you answered my question, and I appreciate that, because one of the things that I have to do is kind of get to the crux of that inspire and educate. And I think it's a testament to the fact that whenever we have taglines or catchphrases, there's really a lot of meat behind those when they're well thought out. And just like you at Universal Accounting, we've got a few that we really kind of emphasize as we use our marketing. And one of them is something that I'm quite proud of. I stand behind it, which is we help people be in business for themselves, but not by themselves. And that's just meant to speak to the various trainings and resources and the coaching and support that we provide. Another one that we have is if it's about accounting, it's universal. And that's meant to speak to the fact that in accounting, there's a lot of things that are needed. And you've addressed MAP, the marketing and sales, the accounting, meaning the services provided, and the production, the means to do it efficiently to be profitable. Well, when you're looking at all of that, there's a number of things that need to be looked at. And if a firm or a business proprietor is struggling in one of those areas, there's a specific program that is meant to deep dive into that area and really address it and give them the confidence and competence that they need to excel in that area, whether it be marketing and sales, bookkeeping, accounting, tax, consulting, or whether it be just the efficiency in which they do the work. So I just love how you were able to expound upon your own statement of inspire and educate. This is what I'd like to do. So I'm going to kind of set the stage for this. I'm going to ask a question of you in just a moment, but I'm going to do a little summary here and mention a sponsor that we haven't brought up. But what I'd like to do is just kind of give you a seed. What is it that you're passionate about in a moment? And then also, what is a quote or a principle that you use in business to kind of manage how you run business? What's that go-to quote that you use to inspire yourself? So before I get to that, let me just quickly do this. As a quick reminder regarding this particular episode, we've got Universal Accounting Center sponsoring today's episode. There's a book called In the Black. It's specifically In the Black, 9 Principles to Make Your Business Profitable. It's for you to actually apply these specific principles in your own company and apply the mapping that Seth so eloquently spoke of earlier. It's here that you learn how to apply MAP in your business and literally learn the things that are needed that you can do to not only improve your company, but then soon take these same principles to your own clientele and become that trusted advisor, providing to them some additional guidance that they need. With that in mind, take advantage of that offer by going to the description of this particular podcast to learn more about Seth as well as Universal Accounting and get a free copy of the ebook In the Black. With that in mind, as a recap, I'm going to share with you a few of the insights I have, but let's get your insights. What's a go-to quote for you regarding your business?
So I think the perfect quote, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to open up the tab to my website so I can read it exactly as I wrote it.
Please.
Because it's what I referred to before, but I want to sort of get the quote exactly right here. So because I have it right on the homepage of my sort of new website, which is at new.nerdenterprises.com. So it says all the tools you need to build a successful online business. That's a core part of what we do, is teaching people how to use the tools, right? Not just QuickBooks, but a lot of productivity tools. I'm really hot on Airtable these days. So the quote, though, to be very specific, is we'll teach you the things that we've figured out about how to, and I should put it in the I form because it's really by we, I mean I'll teach you the things that I've figured out about how to run your business more efficiently, more effectively, and with greater accuracy.
Done, period. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, let me ask then, what's something that you're passionate about? Is there something you'd want to add?
I'm really honestly, and I know it's going to sound a little cliche, but I'm really honestly passionate about helping others. Like I said before, and I wasn't just saying it, it wasn't just lip service. I really am passionate. I get more than any amount of money you can pay me. The greatest satisfaction I ever get is knowing that I've really changed somebody's life because I've taught them something that helped them do something that they couldn't do before, or helped them do it better, just like I said before. That's my greatest passion. If we're talking about like extracurricular sort of passions, I'm getting back into swimming, which I used to love to do when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I was a lifeguard actually when I was in high school and shortly after that. So I'm getting back into that. I really love to swim. We talk a little bit about balance, and especially these days, and you and I, Roger, talked about this a little bit earlier, how, these things do affect our business. If somebody's having problems outside of their business, it's definitely going to impact their performance in their business, right?
Yep.
Which is why I think it is important to have the whole picture sort of addressed somehow. Granted, no, I'm not I'm not a licensed therapist, but at least if I can get some insights into what's going on with a person, the way I explained it to my friend Mike Milan recently is a really good teacher is not just good at explaining things, and not even just good at knowing how to get inside the head of the person that you're trying to teach and understand, their perspective on things. More importantly, and just going a little bit deeper than that, it's being able to see what they can't see. Because that's how, when you're teaching somebody something, that's how you can get that aha moment out of them, by shining light on the thing that they can't see and helping them to see it. Because once they see it, they get it, and the dots are now connected, and it's impossible to break that connection once it's been made.
Well, that's the power of coaching. It's the perspective. You're able to bring a new light, as you just said, to a common situation that without that perspective, they wouldn't see otherwise. So well said. Seth, this has been just an amazing experience. I think your genuineness, you're willing to open and speak today has been duly noted, and I appreciate it. I think that what you've done here is very helpful to those who have listened in. I think they can identify and will relate to your story on a variety of levels, both personally and professionally. So thank you for sharing your story, your insights, and the advice you have, because as we're all in the process of building our businesses, I'm sure that we can actually take the lessons learned from your experience and apply them in our own lives. So let me just kind of wrap up some things here and simply suggest that if you've not already, subscribe to our podcast and make a note to listen in and hear what it is that we have to share here so that you can build the premier accounting business. And with that, I invite you to listen to our other episodes and see what gems are out there, tips and tricks and advice for you to actually build the premier accounting business in your area, offering quality accounting, bookkeeping, and tax services. For more information on how you can apply these principles in your business, obviously visit universalaccountingschool.com and reach out to us. We'd be happy to speak with you and find out more about you, your business, your goals, and what it is that we may be able to do to help you out. You can call Universal at 801-265-3777. And remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take it and have a great day. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you.